Bitcoin. It just smashed through $122,000 in July 2025. The institutions are here, the rules are changing, and everyone wants to know what happens next. Are we going to the moon, or are we about to retest gravity? I dove deep into a comprehensive analyst report on Bitcoin's 2025 trajectory to find out. We're going to break down the three most likely scenarios for its price: the base case, the bull case, and the dreaded bear case. But first, the important stuff. Disclaimer: I am not a financial advisor. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is based on an analysis of aggregated reports. I am not endorsing you to buy or sell anything. Bitcoin is volatile. Do your own research and don't invest more than you're willing to lose. Now, let's get into it. First, you have to understand that the game has changed. The old Bitcoin cycles of parabolic moonshots followed by 80% crashes might be over. Why? 3 letters: ETF. The launch of Spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US was like opening a fire hose of institutional money and pointing it directly at Bitcoin's fixed supply. In December 2024 alone, these ETFs bought up nearly 3 times the amount of Bitcoin that was mined. BlackRock's iShares ETF, IBIT, became the fastest growing ETF in history, swelling to over $75 billion in assets by June 2025. This institutional demand is now the single biggest price driver, outstripping old models like stock to flow. The new market pattern is being called pump and consolidate. Think of it less like a rocket ship and more like building a skyscraper. You build a floor, you solidify it, and then you build the next one. So with that in mind, where's the price headed? All right, let's talk about the base case. This is the most likely scenario, the one analysts are putting their money on if things just continue. The consensus here is a 2025 year-end price in the $135,000 to $145,000 range. Citi is calling for $135K, and the average from Finder.com's analyst panel is about $145K. This scenario assumes a few things. First, ETF inflows continue, but they stabilize. The fire hose doesn't get stronger, but it also doesn't get turned off. Second, the regulators don't throw a wrench in the works. The US government has already established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which is a massive signal of legitimacy. The base case assumes this crypto-friendly vibe continues. And third, the Fed continues with gradual interest rate cuts, keeping money relatively cheap and markets liquid. This is the steady as she goes prediction. No major drama, just Bitcoin maturing into a legitimate asset class. But what if the drama does happen? The good kind of drama. Welcome to the bull case, where things get wild. How wild? Standard Chartered is targeting $200,000 to $250,000. Blockware Intelligence says we could hit $400,000. And Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki is calling for $500,000 or more, citing fears of fiat currency collapse. So how do we get there? This requires a perfect storm. Accelerated ETF inflows. That institutional fire hose? The bull case says it gets cranked to full blast. Corporate and nation-state adoption. More and more public companies start adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets, following the MicroStrategy model. By Q1 2025, public companies already held nearly 2 million BTC. Imagine if a tech giant joins the party. This would kick off a wall of money scenario. Macro tailwinds. The Fed cuts rates more aggressively than expected, creating a liquidity supercycle. A weaker dollar makes Bitcoin, the ultimate hard asset, look even better. Remember, less than 5.3% of all Bitcoin is even left to be mined. This is the ultimate supply squeeze. It's like trying to fit the entire world's demand for water through a single garden hose. The bull case is essentially Bitcoin's final boss battle with the traditional finance world, where it starts absorbing serious capital as a global reserve asset. Okay, time for a reality check. What could go wrong? The bear case doesn't necessarily mean a return to the crypto winter, but it suggests a significant correction is possible. The price targets here are a retest of the $64K to $87K range. Finder's most bearish panelists see it dropping to $70K, while some reports, citing Citi, suggest a potential fall to around $64K. This happens if the positive catalysts reverse. ETF outflows. This is the big one. If that institutional fire hose turns into a drain, the primary price support is gone. We already saw some notable outflows back in Q1 2025. Regulatory attack. Imagine an unexpected ban in a key market or a hard pivot away from the crypto-friendly stance in the US. this would spook the market hard. Macro headwinds. What if inflation stays stubbornly high and the Fed has to raise rates? A stronger dollar and tighter money would be bad news for risk assets like Bitcoin.
A major hack. Over $1.5 billion was lost to hacks in 2024. A massive exchange breach or fraud event could seriously erode investor confidence.
The pump and consolidate theory suggests that even a drop to 74K could be a healthy correction. But if that correction lasts too long, it could spiral into a true bear market. So to recap, the base case is a steady climb to around 140K driven by stable institutional demand. The bull case is a rocket ride to 200K, 400K, or even higher if a perfect storm of adoption and liquidity hits. And the bear case is a gravity check back to the 64 to 87K range if the music stops. The biggest takeaway from this report is that Bitcoin is maturing. Its fate is now tied to Wall Street demand, regulatory tailwinds, and its strengthening narrative as digital gold. The Wild West days of purely retail-driven cycles may be behind us, replaced by a more stable, albeit still volatile, asset. Long-term, firms like ARK Invest are still projecting a future where a single Bitcoin could be worth anywhere from $300,000 in a bear scenario to over $1.5 million in a bull scenario by 2030. But for 2025, the stage is set for a fascinating tug-of-war between these powerful forces. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most likely scenario? Are you in the base, bull, or bear camp for 2025? Drop your price prediction in the comments below and tell me why. Let's discuss.